Thank you, Doctor. I well remember that interview. I usually do a very good job of disguising the nerd in me, so I'm embarrassed that you picked it up that day. but thank you, Doctor, and good afternoon, CPUT. It's absolutely a glorious day for a graduation, and what an outstanding opportunity I now have to wish you a happy 10th birthday. Doctor, faculty, staff, and your incomparable Chancellor, Manuel, who have had the privilege to both admire from afar and to now know as a friend. It is absolutely an honor to be able to thank you for granting me the opportunity to be here with you on this absolutely special day. Moments like these are important to savor because they give us a perch from which to reflect and take stock of our journey. But as we look to the past, let us not be caught staring, but instead, let's lean towards the next African horizon. What a difference a decade makes, CPUT. Starting from the humble beginnings of your merger, today your university is the largest in the region, and over the past decade, you've seen thousands of incredible students graduate. You've made history by launching Africa's first nanosatellite, and you've filed dozens of patents. Your leadership team understands that such breakthroughs are not possible without real investment in infrastructure. For example, your food technology building is the only facility of its kind on the entire African continent, and your planned agri-food facility that will include teaching space, labs, as well as experimental farms will give your scholars a leading edge. Given the importance of food security issues on this continent, these facilities will be critical in saving farmland, national economies, and indeed in saving lives themselves. It's clear to me that CPUT is thinking really big, and I think that's the exact right impulse at this time because your leadership team here isn't just planning for South Africa, they're planning for the entire globe. When you consider the changes that have transpired over the last 10 years and the changes yet to come, having a visionary big picture view is absolutely paramount. Now, change, or transformation, has been the theme of the moment on campuses throughout South Africa. As we all know too well, and as I can attest, both as an African-American man and someone who happens to be in the service of my country's first black president, and as someone who first came to your remarkable country 25 years ago, transformation is a close cousin of disruption. It is not a process free of turbulence, and it's certainly not for the faint of heart. But recently, as I watched my president deliver a stirring address at the foot of the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, a bridge still to this day named for a former leader of the Ku Klux Klan, I realized that transformation does come to fruition when we all of us, black, white, colored, brown, Indian, are able to look back on history as a source of inspiration and not as our jailer. This is your moment to make bold choices as you look both back and ahead. As Frantz Fanon preached in An Age of Liberation, each generation must, out of relative obscurity, discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it. So my question to you today is, what will be your mission? I'm going to insist to you that you are uniquely poised to be the first generation of truly great African tech innovators. You have the perfect confluence of your incredible education and the unprecedented resources that are now being poured into this region as the world awakens to these untapped markets. This is the African moment when you are the architects of your own development and not just passive beneficiaries or spectators. I'm thrilled that the American private sector and government stand ready to partner with you. Consider the new Africa beyond these halls. South Africa is not an island. Your Vice Chancellor talked about the way in which this university is not xenophobic. I was thrilled to hear that because we're in an age where you can't just build a moat around you and pull up the castle walls. South Africa is not an island. Factors such as the declining cost of high-speed internet, the rise of smartphone use across the continent, innovations in banking and payment technology, and the increasing availability of early-stage investment funding have radically transformed the landscape within and beyond your borders. As the average age of new consumers on this continent has plummeted, the availability of bandwidth in Africa increased by a factor of 200% in the last 2 years alone. And wholesale prices for bandwidth have dropped 90% in that very same period on this continent. Even though South Africa is far from reaching its potential in access, I think South Africa only has about 19% bandwidth penetration now. Even though you're very far from reaching your potential, I saw a study recently that details that of the 450,000 small businesses in South Africa that have a website, a full 50% of them could not even exist without the internet. Your world is changing in convulsive ways, and money is following. Whether it's the proliferation of mobile apps in places like Rwanda that motivated Facebook's acquisition of WhatsApp, the launch of IBM's New Innovations Lab in Lagos and in Johannesburg, Microsoft's partnership with 3 incubators in Africa, or the African Development Bank's recent summit on how to engage the private sector more effectively, African entrepreneurship is on the minds of American investors as a winning proposition. Think about this. This is a challenge for your generation. You are the very first generation of Africans that is seeing a moment when this continent is attracting more in foreign direct investment than in foreign aid. What does that mean for your creativity? What does that mean for your innovations? What does that mean for your personal sense of ownership and enterprise? And the acute tech challenges that persist in this region, poor infrastructure, low rates of electrification, lack of accessible water, the already evident impact of climate change on agriculture, these are no longer viewed as prohibitive hindrances, but are instead seen as opportunities for the bold and the enterprising and those who are not risk-averse. These are your opportunities. These opportunities are, of course, only made possible by the technical and scientific training you have just received. Today, the STEM areas of education, science, technology, engineering, and math, are increasingly important around the world as we face the challenges of globalization and the increasing importance of a knowledge-based economy at a time when currency is more mobile than it's ever been, manufacturing is mobile, and the new natural resource on the planet is big data. At that time, your STEM skills are closely linked to global competitiveness. We like to say, in God we trust, but we have to add an addendum. In God we trust, all others bring data. In addition to our private sector, the U.S. government is also your waiting partner. As highlighted in President Obama's historic African Leaders Summit in August of last year. We lifted up a science and technology-based partnership with 21st century African governments, businesses, and universities like this one. With programs like our USAID's Global Development Lab, we've tested and scaled new solutions to chronic development challenges, like the prescription medication verification and tracking system invented in Kenya by Kenyans that has reached over 2 million customers in Ghana, Nigeria, and East Africa by placing a simple scratch card on packets of medication. The scratch card reveals a numerical code, and when texted to a phone number, will verify whether the drug is genuine or a fake. Simple technology applied, advanced by Kenyans to bring up solutions to a problem that they were facing. Dozens of similar innovations dreamt up by Africans themselves that have the potential to save millions of lives are currently being tested and scaled up throughout the continent with the support of this U.S. lab. Our Power Africa initiative is perhaps the ultimate example of this new model of doing business and partnering in Africa. Through the U.S. government's partnerships with African governments, private investors, developers, and others, not only is Power Africa saving lives by, for example, creating electrification and turning on lights in rural clinics, it's also spurring long-term growth by scaling up new technologies, generating new jobs, and, most importantly for you all, reducing the risk for foreign investment that will create resources for investments in startups that will be created by the geniuses in this room. I want the parents in particular to listen to this. The parents who, through their sweat equity, put the resources together to fund your education. We're now at a moment in Africa for the first time where there are resources that are available in abundance to invest in your ideas, to invest in your startups, like the CPUT students who recently won a top prize at the International Explorer New Automation Competition by designing and building an automated solar oven power generator, a device that operates off the grid and which can be used to boil water, cook food, and power a battery. So I just want to say right now that if that winning CPU team is in the room, I'm ready to write a check and invest in your enterprise. CPUT, faculty, and graduates, you are at the ground zero of a resurgent Africa. You are arming students with the proper skills and supplying well-trained graduates to create a critical mass of tech-savvy workers who can help expand your growing Silicon Cape. Doctor, your students are who startups are looking for. They're doing the research and development on materials that companies need to develop their next generation of products. As I close, I'd like to leave everyone with a vision of the future. I appreciated the vision that your Vice Chancellor laid out. I'm going to lay out a slightly different one. Think about where you want South Africa to be in the next decade. We're celebrating 10 years of CPUT. Let's think about the next 10 years, not only of your institution, but of this entire country. How can we work together to develop an innovation economy that is switched on with advanced manufacturing, good and plentiful jobs, and with an educated workforce? A country that is efficient user of energy, a country that is more environmentally conscious, a country with smart cities that make it easier for residents to live and work in a more sustainable environment. Not that long ago, I took a trip up to the Karoo, and I got to see up close the square kilometer away. I was absolutely blown away, in particular by the young African PhD students who for the next 10 years will be spending their time there exploring dark matter and trying to reconcile the irreconcilable questions that have dogged mankind forever. That's happening here in South Africa. What should that mean to you? How do we partner with that? How do we support that? Part of the answer is in this very room. It is the dedication that each of you here today brings to realizing your vision. How will each one of you own the next hour of this spinning globe once you've discarded your cap and gown? Take a hard look at the graduates sitting next to you. It matters not how much I might praise you today. It matters not how much confidence you might have in your own self alone. You are each about the business of transformation and of nation building. The key is that you have faith in one another. Look to your neighbor. Is this the one who will develop that cure for type 1 diabetes? Look to your neighbor. Is she the one who will produce new pest-resistant crops? Which one of these neighbors will find a way to harness the richness of the oceans while not overfishing them? Which brother do you believe will innovate groundbreaking new desalination technology? Look to your neighbors and know that your gifts are not yours alone, that we all of us are jewels in an interconnected web that allows our brilliance to reflect right back on a neighboring spirit. When the Vice Chancellor was introducing me, he said that all of you were about to be ambassadors, and he thought that perhaps I might know a thing or two about being an ambassador. Well, you know what? I'll tell you as we end here that an ambassador is simply a servant to a vision, a promise, an ideal. I'm often, whenever I need to be humbled in my role, and I want to lift this up as some advice to you so that we're not just living in our own atoms. but are breaking beyond and making the real connections to the people sitting next to us today and for the next 50 years of this country, this continent, and this world. Whenever I want to be humbled, I think about what Madiba said when he exited from prison those many years, long years ago, when he said that he came to his people not as a prophet, but as a servant leader. I think about the words of the greatest American who ever lived, Dr. King, when he said that all of us have the capacity to be great because all of us can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your noun and verb agree to serve. You don't have to know Einstein's theory of relativity to serve. You don't have to know the second theory of thermonuclear dynamics to serve. All you need is a heart full of love and a committed purpose. You have the brilliance of your education. You have the example of the generations that precede you. You just need to appreciate that transformation, true transformation, begins from within, and it is a collective. You are the ones that we've been waiting for. Thank you so very much for inviting me. Thank you for allowing